Imagine this. You're standing on stage in your cap and gown, the crowd still clapping as your name is called. Then your own uncle grabs the microphone and announces to the entire auditorium, "As the trustee of Sophia's trust fund, I'll be managing every single penny from now on." The applause dies. Hundreds of eyes turn to me. My stomach drops. I'm Sophia Bennett, 22 years old, fresh out of college with a business degree I fought tooth and nail to earn. My parents died in a car crash when I was 14, and Uncle Richard has been the only family I've had since. Or so I thought. That moment at my graduation ceremony was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Instead, it became the day everything I believed about my future shattered in public. You see, I had no idea there even was a trust fund. I'd spent the last 8 years living modestly, scholarships, part-time jobs, ramen noodles, and prayers. I dreamed of starting my own consulting firm, proving I could stand on my own 2 feet. Uncle Richard always acted like the generous guardian. He'd say things like, "Don't worry about money, sophomore. I've got you covered." But there were little cracks I ignored. The way he'd ask for my signature on school forms, the expensive vacations he took while complaining the family was tight on cash, the way he pushed me to study what he wanted instead of what I loved. Before we continue with this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Now here he was, 48 years old, tall and confident in his tailored suit, smiling like he'd just given me the greatest gift. His wife, Linda, 45, sat beside him beaming. Their son, Tyler, 20, smirked from the 3rd row like he already knew the punchline. Why would he do this? Why announce it so publicly, at my moment? Was he trying to control me? Protect me? Or was something much darker happening? I stood there frozen, cheeks burning, while whispers rippled through the crowd. My hands shook as I clutched my diploma. I wanted to scream, to run, to disappear. But I couldn't, because 3 rows back, sitting quietly in a navy blazer, was Elena Morales, my late mother's best friend and the lawyer I had secretly contacted 2 years earlier after noticing too many red flags. She wasn't clapping. She was watching Uncle Richard with sharp eyes, and her fingers were already sliding a thick folder out of her briefcase. A different file. What was in that folder? Why did Elena look like she had been waiting for this exact moment? I had no idea that the next 24 hours would rip my family apart and hand me back control of a future I never knew was stolen from me. But right then, all I could hear was my uncle's voice echoing through the auditorium, and the sound of my own heartbeat drowning everything else out. The clapping finally stopped, but the damage was done. Backstage, the moment the curtain closed, I stormed straight toward Uncle Richard. My voice came out sharper than I expected. "What the hell was that? What trust fund?" He turned with that calm, fatherly smile he'd perfected over the years, the one that always made me feel like a scared little girl again. "Sophia, relax. Your parents set it up before they passed. I'm just doing what they asked, protecting your future until you're truly ready." But his eyes didn't match the smile. There was something tight behind them, something calculated. That night, the family gathered for the traditional post-graduation dinner at Richard and Linda's big house, the one with the marble floors and the pool I was never really allowed to use without permission. Tyler lounged on the couch scrolling his phone, barely looking up. Linda kept refilling glasses like nothing awkward had happened. I couldn't eat. My mind kept replaying every conversation we'd had since I was 14. After the accident, Uncle Richard stepped in immediately. He handled the funeral, the insurance paperwork, everything. He told me I didn't need to worry about money. He'd take care of it all. I was grateful. I was grieving. I was a child. But looking back now, the red flags were everywhere. He'd make comments like, "You're too young to understand these things, sophomore," or when I turned 18 and asked about my parents' estate, he'd wave it off. "It's complicated, tied up in investments. Better I manage it for now." I signed whatever he put in front of me because he was family, because I trusted him. Elena sat quietly at the far end of the table. She had been my mother's closest friend since college, the one who sent birthday cards and checked in when Richard's support started feeling more like control. 2 years ago, After Richard pressured me to sign yet another set of vague documents for college expenses, I finally called her. She listened without judgment and said 3 words that stuck with me. "Let me look." During dinner, Richard raised his glass to Sophia and to me continuing to guide her trust fund responsibly for the next decade at least. The table went awkwardly silent. Tyler chuckled under his breath. She should be grateful, honestly. I felt my face heat up. Grateful? For what? Being treated like a child at 22. For watching him live large while I scraped by? That's when I caught Elena's subtle nod across the table. Her eyes said, "Not here. Not yet." Later that night, as everyone was leaving, Richard pulled me aside in the hallway. "Sign the new papers tomorrow, Sophia. It's for your own good. You'll get a generous monthly allowance, enough to live comfortably while I handle the rest." His tone left no room for argument. But as I walked out to my car, my phone buzzed. A text from Elena. "Come to my office first thing in the morning. The documents you signed weren't what they seemed. And the trust fund? It's much bigger than he's letting on." My hands started shaking. What had I actually signed all those years? And what exactly was Uncle Richard so desperate to keep controlling? The next morning my phone rang before I even finished my coffee. Uncle Richard's voice was all business. "Sophia, come by the house. We need to go over the papers." "My office. 10 minutes. No hello. No how are you. Just a command." I drove over with my stomach in knots. When I walked into his home office, the one with the mahogany desk and the photos of him shaking hands with people who looked important, he was already waiting. He slid a thick stack of documents across the table like it was nothing. "Sign here," he said, tapping a highlighted clause. "It gives me full discretion over the trust for the next 10 years. In return, you'll get a very generous monthly allowance. Enough to live comfortably while you figure out your little startup dreams." I stared at the page. 10 years. My hands went cold. This was the moment everything escalated. I realized the trust fund wasn't some small safety net. It was over $1.8 million. Life insurance from my parents, smart investments they'd set up, shares in the family business my dad had built. It was supposed to become fully accessible the day I turned 21, with only a few reasonable conditions my parents had written themselves. But Richard had quietly rewritten the rules after the accident. He'd used legal loopholes, old guardianship papers, and my naive signatures to make himself the sole trustee. I flashed back to 2 years ago, the day I found an old letter from my mom tucked in a box of her things. In her handwriting she'd written, "Richard has offered to help, but I'm not sure he's the right person long-term. Elena will know what to do if anything feels off." That letter was why I'd called Elena in the first place. Across the desk, Richard leaned in, confident. "Your parents trusted me, Sophia. Don't make this difficult." Tyler walked past the open door and smirked. "Just sign it, cuz. Stop being ungrateful." Linda hovered in the hallway, pretending not to listen. The emotional weight hit me like a truck. I felt orphaned all over again, not by death this time, but by the one person I thought had my back. He'd been using advances from the fund to cover his own failing side business and Tyler's gambling debts while I lived on ramen and student loans. The irony burned. I had been the responsible one all along. I pushed the papers back. "I need time." As I stood up to leave, my phone buzzed in my pocket. One new text from Elena. "The second file is ready. Meet me now. It changes who really controls everything." I didn't sign. I didn't even say goodbye. I just turned and walked out, heart hammering, wondering how much deeper this betrayal actually went. In Elena's quiet office downtown, the door clicked shut behind me and the real storm finally broke. She opened the thick folder on her desk without a word. Page 1 hit like a slap. Bank statements showing thousands diverted from the trust fund over the years. Luxury vacations, Tyler's gambling debts, even the down payment on Richard's new boat. Forged signatures. Altered documents. My name scrawled in places I'd never seen. "This wasn't mismanagement, Sophia," Elena said, her voice steady but sharp. "This was systematic." My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages. Every red flag from the past 8 years suddenly glowed bright red. Those school forms I signed as a teenager? They were amendments quietly shifting control. The times Richard complained about tight family cash while driving a new Mercedes? Straight from my parents' money. The public announcement at graduation wasn't kindness, it was a power move. He knew I was about to turn 22 and gain legal leverage, so he tried to lock me in front of witnesses before I could fight back. I felt sick. Years of gaslighting crashed over me. Every time I questioned him, he'd say I was being paranoid, ungrateful, just like your mother. My mom's old letter had been right all along. Elena kept talking, laying out the proof she'd gathered quietly for 2 years. Witness statements, hidden account records, everything. My phone buzzed nonstop. Richard was already texting threats. Don't do anything stupid. I can cut you off completely. The family will side with me. Tyler sent a message too. You're ruining everything for nothing. The stakes felt crushing. Emotional, I was grieving my parents all over again, realizing the one adult I trusted had been stealing my future. Social, the same family that clapped at graduation would now whisper I was causing drama. Financial, without the fund, my startup plans, my apartment, everything hung by a thread. But something shifted inside me as I sat there. Heartbreak turned to steel. My mother had seen this coming and tried to protect me. Elena had been waiting for this exact day. She slid the final document across the desk. There's one more page in this file, the original trust papers your parents actually signed the month before the accident. It names a different trustee entirely. My breath caught. I reached for the page, fingers shaking so badly the paper rattled. The name staring back at me in clean black ink changed everything I thought I knew about my family. And in that second, I realized the betrayal wasn't just about money. It was about who my parents had never trusted with my future and who they had chosen instead. The name on that final page was Elena Morales. My mother's best friend, the woman sitting across from me right now, had been named the primary trustee the month before my parents' accident. My parents had seen the risks. They'd written it in black and white. Richard was only a temporary guardian until I turned 21. After that, full control passed to Elena, with strict rules to protect me from exactly the kind of power grab he'd attempted. Richard had hidden the original documents, forged amendments, and spent 8 years treating my future like his personal bank account. Everything clicked into place. The public announcement at graduation? A desperate Hail Mary to pressure me into signing before I could discover the truth. The school forms? Quiet theft. The lavish lifestyle while I scraped by? Straight from my parents' foresight. No more questions. No more gaps. The entire story was finally laid bare in that folder. I sat there stunned, tears spilling down my cheeks, not from sadness, but from the deepest wave of relief and justice I'd ever felt. For the first time since I was 14, I didn't feel like an orphan someone had to manage. I felt protected. Seen. My parents had fought for me from beyond the grave, and Elena had guarded that secret for years until I was ready. Thank you, I whispered, voice cracking. She just squeezed my hand and said, they knew you'd be strong enough. The aftermath hit fast and real. Elena filed the paperwork that same week. Richard was legally removed as trustee within 30 days. Civil charges followed for the diverted funds, over $400,000 he had to repay from his own assets or face liens on that big house with the marble floors. No dramatic arrest, just quiet, grinding legal consequences that stripped his control and forced him to sell the boat he'd bought with my money. Socially, the family fractured. Some relatives sided with him out of old loyalty and cut contact with me. Others apologized in awkward texts, admitting they'd suspected something but stayed silent. Tyler lost his safety net overnight. He had to get a real job for the first time and stopped smirking at family gatherings. Linda moved into a smaller place and barely spoke to Richard anymore. Personally, I changed. I gained full access to what remained of the fund, enough to launch my consulting firm without fear. No more ramen budgets. No more proving myself to people who never deserved my trust. 6 months later, I stood at the small launch party for Bennett Consulting, surrounded by real friends and a few reconciled family members. I raised a glass quietly to the sky and said, Mom, Dad, you got my back after all. Then I walked forward, head high, into the future they had fought to give me, completely, finally, and forever my own. No more secrets. No more control. Just me, standing tall on my own 2 feet.